So first of all, congratulations on your second book.
Thank you very much.
I have read it, obviously. Maybe that's not obvious, but I have read it, and it is very, very funny. I think it's even funnier than your debut, which is saying a lot, because that one was also very funny. So let's just jump right in, I guess. So since this is your second book, how did you find the experience writing your second book compared to your first? Was there like a difference writing on contract versus writing with the hopes that maybe one day you'd get published?
Yeah, there's like some ways harder and some ways easier because like you said, with the hopes of someday being promised. So when I wrote Till There Was You, it was my first time trying to write a book. And that was the book that I was querying to get an agent and like trying to get the whole thing off the ground. So, you know, there was like a different kind of pressure. You wanted it to be as good as you can make it. I had so many people read it and give me notes. And you know how it goes when you have so many people read it and give you notes and you're like, I don't even know what this book is about anymore. So there's all that pressure that you want to get it just right. And so when I sold Till There Was You, I sold it as a 2-book deal. So, which is pretty common for romance. Usually when it's your first book, they usually give you 2 books so you have a little bit of a backlist, I guess is their reasoning. So I sold Till There Was You and also another book that didn't exist. And so when I wrote Never Planned on You, like some of the pressure was off because it was a done deal. Like it was guaranteed it was going to get published no matter how good or bad it was. And so like that was less stressful, but then there was like the new stress of you have to write it by this time. And they were like, it's due in this time, but actually that's when it's really, really due after you've given it to us earlier. And like, that was stressful. And then another thing that was really stressful, the second time that was harder, was that like now you've been like perceived. And, you know, people have read your book and their first book and they have opinions, like good opinions and bad opinions. And then you're like writing with that. And the advice that every author gives and never takes is to not read your own reviews. So I was like, I'm gaming this system. And I read, like I filtered. I was like, I'll just read the nice ones. And so like on Goodreads, you can like just do just the 5-star newest. And I was like, this is going to be a nice little, this is going to be nice. But then, you know, you're reading, like the compliments get in your head too, because like people were saying, Till There Was You was so great. I loved that it was a combination of love and grief. Like I think books that have both love and grief are the best books. And I was like, well, this doesn't have grief. Like, no one's going to, and then they were like, I love, you know, in Till There Was You, they have the 3 best friends. And I think the best 5-star books have like a group of 3 friends, and I was like, oh shit. Like, so then like no matter what now you've gotten in your head, and you know the problem with that is that when you start trying to write what you think people want to read, then it stops being fun and it stops feeling like authentic. So that was one way it was harder, but it was also easier because I knew that either way, you know, I had the agent, I had the editor, they were stuck with me, it was coming out. So pros and cons.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I wasn't expecting that having 2 books would be like a very odd number of books, because instead of being compared to people you look up to, you start being compared to yourself, but like 2 years before. And people talk about how you are compared to that person, and you're like, but why don't you still like me? Like, I'm the same person. It's just 2 years later. I should be better at this now. Yeah. But yeah, I sometimes do the 5-star most recent too. And then somebody inevitably is like, other than the characters being really annoying, I love this book, 5 stars. And then I'm like,
such a slippery, because they'll trick you with the 5 stars. They'll be like, what I liked about this book was the title and the cover. And actually the characters sucked. Yeah. But 5 stars, and we've got you to read it.
Yeah, you have to be really careful sometimes, because people will be like nice and then sneak in one thing that will destroy your soul.
Destroy you.
So this book is about Allie, and we first met her in Till There Was You, which is your first book, where she was our main character Lexi's best friend from culinary school. Did you know at that point that you were going to be giving her her own book? And at what point did you decide she was going to quit being a chef and try out event planning?
So I did not know she was going to get a book. I did not know anything about writing romance when I wrote the first book. It was a large learning experience. And one thing I didn't know, first thing I didn't know was you have to have an epilogue. minus a lot of stars.
I didn't have an epilogue.
Well, 0 stars for you. So you have to have an epilogue. And also, I didn't realize that like a lot of times with these contemporary romances, people do like companion novels in the same world. So when I sold the first book and my editor was like, do you have an idea for the second book? And I was like, I'm just excited I sold this book. Like, no, I don't have any other ideas. So I came up with an idea. I can tell you the story about how I came up with the idea, but when I pitched it to her, she was like, can you make this Allie's book? I was like, okay. I had come up with, just to pivot a little bit, I came up with this idea because I get pop-ups on my computer from the New York Post. I don't know why. I don't read the New York Post that often. But the New York Post has crazy stories, and I feel like that's the pop-ups you get. So I got this pop-up one day, and the story was this woman in a bar, she got drunk in a bar, and she got a man's name tattooed on her butt, and she needs to find him because he might be the love of her life, and she is on a quest to find the man who was on her butt. And I was like, so I was thinking about it, and then I was like, what if, it was 2 people and they were tattoo twins and they had to find their way back to each other. They thought they were never going to see each other again, and that kind of rolls from there. And so I pitched that, and then I had this idea that she could be a wedding planner, because that would also just be hijinksy and fun. And they were like, can you make it Allie's book? And I was like, well, Allie's a chef. But my editor, who ended up buying the book, is also from Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore. She's from Baltimore. And I was like, if you buy this book, I will make the second one take place in Baltimore. So I was like, okay, she's a chef now in Baltimore. We're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. So I made the backstory that Allie was from Baltimore. I never said where she was from. And, kind of built into her character that she was somebody who would be a little bit of a career changer. I mean, she did get a stranger's name tattooed. Not her name. She got a stranger's tattoo. So she would, the least she can do is, switch it up a little bit in her career. So that is how we landed on that plot.
Speaking of the tattoo, are we going with pigacorn or unipig?
I like to mix it. I think unipig.
Unipig.
It goes both ways. When I was brainstorming it with one of my humorist friends and we were talking about it, she's like, it's a unipig, it's a pigacorn. And I was like, oh, that's funny. And I typed that right into the draft.
And now you have stickers.
I do. I have stickers that look like the unipigacorn.
And she didn't let me take all of them, so there's still some for you. So what were the differences between writing the characters of Lexi and writing the character of Allie? And did you have to do anything to get into the right voice for Allie?
I think that was the hardest. Once you get past the Goodreads tragedy in your head, I think the hardest thing about this book was they're both in first person and making the voice different because, I think you do subconsciously, you start writing as yourself a little bit, and to differentiate the characters was hard. There were a lot of times I was reading this and I was like, do I just sound like Lexi again? And I was I kept going back to Till There Was You and looking at the scenes with Allie and seeing some of the jokes she made. Some of the things I did were really, basic. Like I said, in the first book that she had this sweatshirt with all of Shawn Mendes' tattoos. So I put that in the second book and tried to tie it over. But I was really... A lot of her character was inspired by my sister-in-law, and so I would sometimes just text her and just kind of get conversations with her to get in that viewpoint. But yeah, that was one of the hardest parts. I think I had to ask myself sometimes what is different about Lexi versus Allie? And I think Allie says more what she's thinking, and Lexi kind of holds it in more. And so I try to do a little bit less internal monologue and more just her saying everything that she was thinking to sort of differentiate it. But it was really hard. Yeah,
I'm writing one right now that is dual POV first person. And I'm like, do these characters sound like different people? I don't know.
I'm also writing that and I'm like, is this what men think? I don't think it is.
I decided that one of them has asides in parentheses and one of them has asides in M dashes, and that's going to be...
That's why you're a USA Today best-selling author. The craft.
So you're from Baltimore. I'm also technically from Baltimore. I was born there. We moved when I was 3. but I loved it as someone who has roots there, who had family there growing up, visited a lot, went to so many Orioles games. Was it difficult knowing the city so well and deciding what places you were going to name drop and what you weren't going to mention?
In some ways it was, because, some of the places, I just picked places that I liked. And so, like, my favorite city area is Hamden, and so I love Hamden, and I wanted to write that in. And so to prepare for this book, I really did like a trip down there with two of my writing partners, actually. And we went down there and we walked around 36th Street, and we went into this used bookstore. And in the used bookstore, I found this Jewish Festivals Cooking Cookbook. And so I wrote that whole plot into the book. Like, that was all kind of organic. But Baltimore is so diverse, and the city and the suburbs are also very different from each other. And I really wanted to represent all of it, but I wanted to represent it in a way that I felt I could speak to. And so there's like two main locations in Baltimore that the book takes place. It takes place in the city downtown, and then it takes place in Allie's hometown, which is like an unnamed suburbs, which is basically based on Pikesville, which is the suburbs where I grew up. And they're both really specific. Like, downtown, especially Hamden area, is like very artsy, like very hip. It's got the Hun Cafe. I don't know if it's still open. It's got like, it's like very like flamingo pink. Like, it's really cool and hip. And then like the suburbs, like 30 minutes north, is like, it's like the modern day version of like Anna Tefka from Fiddle on the Roof. Like, it is like everyone's grandma knows each other, and like it's just like very intimate and like super Jewish, and it's just like a different vibe. And I wanted both of them in the book, so I was trying to pick places for each one that would like showcase each one of those places. Like, I picked the bagel place. That's a real bagel place. That's like a kind of like a Pikesville staple. But then I also picked that bookstore. I picked that cafe. And then I also threw in PBR, which is where I went for my bachelorette party, because I just thought that would be fun.
Yeah, my uncle actually owned a bakery in Pikesville for a large chunk of my childhood. And then it was kosher for a while, too. So I have fond memories of going to visit and getting cookies. But speaking of the bagel place, it's called Goldberg's. I don't know if anyone's been. It's fabulous. They have a couple locations, Baltimore, Rockville, Silver Spring. As you can tell, I'm a fan of Goldberg's. So my question for you is, why are Goldberg's bagels so good? Because I think you mentioned in the book that they're like second to New York bagels.
Yeah. I mean, I think the short answer to that is that the full name of Goldberg's is Goldberg's New York Bagels. Like, they take it very seriously. And New York bagels are made in a different way. I mean, they're, in addition, like, I think they're baked and boiled, but they're definitely boiled, and not all bagels are boiled. Like, I find here I'm eating a lot of the, like, Wegmans rolls with a hole in the center that they're calling bagels, but they're just bread. Like, they're just baked in a different way. I think that they boil them in like some kind of like rye water. But New York, and I don't know if they're going this far, but like New York bagels have a reputation for being better because of the water in New York. The water in New York has like some kind of like pH. I've researched this. That's better. So I don't know if they're like importing them or what, or if they're just doing the style, but they are really good. And they're also like, you have to have a good ratio of like size of bagel to the hole in the middle to like how hard it is on the outside versus how hard it is on the inside. I feel like it achieves all of those things. We spent a lot of time talking about bagels in my house.
That's why I asked. I had a feeling you would know. But another thing I noticed about them the first time I had them that really blew my mind was they double dip. Mm-hmm. So they dip the bottom and the top in like with the everything seasoning. So you're not just getting like a plain bagel bottom and an everything top. That is also, I think, a sign of a next level bagel.
Yeah, that's a good bagel. And they have like a whole wheat everything, which is my favorite. And that's a rare combo.
Yeah, when you find one of those, because then you can trick yourself into saying it's healthy.
It is healthy. It's whole wheat.
It's like, this is a grain. I'm eating a whole grain. This is like what's recommended by.
I have a slice of tomato on my bagel. Like, this is a salad.
I do that with veggie cream cheese.
Yeah, totally.
And then continuing with food.
Yeah.
there is a moment where, do they get snowballs? I think they get snowballs, right? Or do they just talk about getting them?
I can't remember if they get them or they just talk about them. I actually cannot remember.
It's been a long time since you probably read this.
It's been
I don't think people realize how long it takes to publish a book.
I tried to listen to the audiobook the other day and I was like, oh.
So what, in your opinion, are the best snowball flavors and the worst snowball flavors? I hope you don't alienate anyone. Good luck.
Okay. First of all, I did not know until I went to college that snowballs were a Baltimore thing. I did not know. And I remember talking about them. I went for 1 year to the University of Delaware before I transferred to Maryland. And I remember like being at the University of Delaware talking about snowballs and they were like, you mean like those little Debbie's cakes? And I was like, no, like a snowball, like the, you know, in the cup, the styrofoam cup. And like no one knew it. I did not know it was a Baltimore thing. So if you don't know what it is, a snowball, it's kind of like Rita's, like, but it's harder. So it's like a block, like a solid block of ice ball with the syrup on top. So I think the best flavor is chocolate with marshmallow sauce. It's like a liquid marshmallow sauce. That's my favorite. I think everyone else's favorite is the Skylight, which is blue. Like the flavor is blue. It is like this specific cerulean blue. And I was like talked about it in my document, and I said to my editor, like, what does Skylight taste like? And she's like, blue. And I was like, I know, but like, what does it really taste like? And I looked up. It's like the blue raspberry, but also has vanilla in it. Like it's like exactly this color. It's really pretty. And all the kids like cerulean. That's cerulean. They like the Skylight. It's good. I don't like the egg custard. It's another really popular flavor, and I think it's gross. Sorry if anybody likes egg custard snowballs.
Yeah, we moved from Baltimore to South Central Pennsylvania, Hanover, and there is still a snowball culture there. At the Crab Shack, literally called the Crab Shack, has a snowball hut attached, and they're famous for their Kahlua one. And my mom gets it layered with vanilla ice cream. So that is also a thing, but I don't know if any of the places in Baltimore are doing that.
There is a place, the Cow, in Reisterstown, and they do like custard and ice cream with the snowballs. I know. I have not been there in a long time because it's not close to anything, but.
For the record, not that this matters, I like cherry with marshmallow.
matters
if anyone wants to
Sarah.
get me a snowball and have it not melt by the time you get it to me.
And they're always in those huts too. Like they're literally like a wooden hut. It looks like a puppet show.
Yeah, it's literally a converted shed almost always. It's just a shed.
Yep, just a shed. And
with a window.
And a line all the way down the street.
And a dry erase board with all the flavors.
Yes.
Because even though the flavors never change, it has to be on a dry erase board for some reason.
These are the hard-hitting things I need to have in my Baltimore book.
So there is a scene where they go to a Roblox-themed bar mitzvah. So I wanted to know, getting into the Lindsay lore, what was your bat mitzvah theme? And if you were to redo it now as an adult, which doesn't make any sense, what would it be now?
First of all, I feel like we all know what our theme would be now. Like, we've all thought about it. That's such a good question. I feel like asking somebody like what their bat mitzvah theme was is like asking them what their zodiac sign is. Like there's so much to be revealed about your personality. So my bat mitzvah theme was art, because I was very into art. I had a very, my screen name at the time was Art Girl, just in case you were not sure if I really liked art. It was art, but it was also purple. It was specifically purple art. So, and it was like very DIY. Like we had gone to like, I don't even think like Heckinger's exists anymore. It was like a Lowe's. And we went and got like empty paint cans and poured like paint down the sides and put purple balloons in them as centerpieces. And then like one of my neighbors had like a whole bunch of, I don't know what his job was, but he had all this stuff in his basement. He was some kind of collector. So we had like a mannequin that we got from his basement that we dressed up like an artist, and he had like a beret with like the sign-in board was like an easel. But it was also like lightly Titanic because it was 1999. If I was going to do my theme now, which of course I have thought about on more than one occasion, I think like I might want to do Broadway, and each table would be like a different Broadway, but I soft launched this at my wedding, and it did not like go well. Like I was like, oh, we'll have like during dinner, we'll just like play Broadway show tunes, and it just like, everyone's just like eating chicken to like Oliver Twist. Like it went downhill. Like, so I don't know, but, or it would be a Harry Styles themed bar mitzvah. You know, and then you would have like a fruit bar with all the different fruits, like a little tattoo station. It would work. It would be great.
So without too many spoilers, because this book just came out and most people have not read it, what is your favorite joke or bit in the whole book that you can remember?
So I realized last night when I was talking about this that I have not one but two Titanic jokes in this book. One was not enough. My favorite, I mean, there's two parts that I really like. I have one part where I have Allie, who's the main character, she gets her whole book, like in the beginning, her family's trying to set her up with the funeral director from her town because they're like, business is always good, like you're gonna have a good life. And first she's like really like, I'm not going out with the funeral director. But then like when she realizes she's planning the wedding of her tattoo twin that she thought she was going to have a relationship with, she's like, all right, I've hit bottom, like let's do this. And I tried to make it really funny, and I did, unfortunately, had gone out on a date in real life with the funeral director when my bubby did set me up with his bubby. And so I did draw from that, but I tried to make it, I feel bad. But like, so I made him like, I mean, he's a nice person in real life. I made him like a lot less appealing in this book, but I made it so it's like an awkward scene because they're on this terrible date, and then Graham, who's the love interest, and his fiance come in, and there's no other tables, and they all have to sit together, and then it's just like awkward for like everybody at the table is uncomfortable for like a different reason, and I think that's really fun. And then I have another scene that I really liked where they get locked in an industrial freezer together, which I think you do have a follow-up question on that one. But my friends, I have like two writing partners, and they were like, you should lock him in a freezer. And I was like, that sucks. Like, I hate that idea. And then they were like, no, it'd be really funny. And I do think it was really funny. And it was like funny, and then gets like a little sexy, and then it gets like awkward, and then it gets more funny. So I think that one's really fun too.
Yeah, I did find that very funny because she's trying to tell him that she was locked in the freezer because like the door like doesn't hold open or whatever, and he's like, no, it does, look, and just like shuts them both in. Yeah, so my final question, which I mean maybe is the most important, in your acknowledgments, you mentioned that you were thanking your husband for his knowledge of industrial freezers, and I think he's a physician. So how did he come by that? I was just curious.
First of all, I apologize if you've already heard the story because I've told it a lot of times. So apologies if you've already heard this one. But so before Avi was a doctor and he was in college, he was just a physics student who was also in the marching band, and then on the side worked in the dining hall. He had so many girlfriends. And so he knew about the industrial freezers because he worked in the dining hall. And so when I got this idea and everyone was talking about it, and I was like, you can't like just like be an industrial freezer, you would get locked in. And he was like, you wouldn't get locked in, there's an inner door actuator. And I was like, Evan, you know him. You're like, yeah. And so I was like, I don't know what this means. So, and he was like, just give me the computer. So I have this scene open, and he's just like, and I was like, all right, well, I guess we've explained it now. And I turned in this book to my editor, and my editor like flags this, and she's like, why did all of a sudden Graham get so annoying and unlikable? And I was like, because he stopped being a man written by a woman, and now he's just a real man. He's not likable anymore. She was like, please fix this. Like, I don't need to know exactly how the exact workings of the freezer work. So I was like, delete like 7 lines. And I was just like, it doesn't lock from the inside. It's like how it's all like ended up, but it's like, poor Avi. It's like,
that was a great story to go out on. Thank you. So I think we're going to turn it over to audience questions.
Yes.
So.
Yep. If you do have a question, just raise your hand. I will bring you the mic. I can ask one as you're thinking, if that's what we want to do. Okay, cool. Lindsay, I was curious, as a writer of these rom-coms, which is a genre that is like a huge seller right now, right? It's probably, like romance in general, I think is the biggest money-making genre in the publishing industry. It also gets a lot of flack. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you, don't know, cater to a primarily female audience? Like, how do you take all of that into consideration as you are writing, if you do?
Yeah. No, that's such a good question, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. It is the highest selling, genre, and it is like carrying the publishing industry, and it still doesn't get any respect. Like Rebecca Yaros's book just came out, and she sold $21 million worth of books in the first week. And I don't remember what publication it was, but someone was like, "Dragon porn's really hot right now," and just like totally degrade. I mean, like she sold more than like I think the blockbuster movies had been making in a month, and it's still not getting like they're still just like, oh, it's lady porn, and just like totally disrespectful of it. And it is hard. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I was on Good Day PA yesterday. And I was in the green room with like all these other men, and it came up that I was a writer, and they were like, "What do you write? Romance?" And I was like, "Yes."
Brett Thackeray didn't say that to you, did he?
It was Brack Thackeray would never.
I know. Okay, great.
No, Brack Thackeray was lovely. No, but like, and that's like the expectation that and they're like, "Oh yeah, like my daughter reads that." And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know. It's hard to break away from that. But, I think there's a reason that women, I'm like respectfully, I feel like there's a reason that women like men written by women, and I think that, it's something that we are doing for each other. And so I can't really like be too brought down by like what people think of it when I know that it is a community that is like self-sustaining and that people really like draw pleasure and joy from. So we just keep on keeping on.
And I know you didn't ask me, but
Sarah, what do you think?
I don't know if I have that much to say but I do think it might not really feel like it unless you're looking very closely, but I think we're at a point where more people than ever are reading romance. And I don't just mean women. More non-binary people, more men, more just everybody is starting to see that this is a genre they can turn to for hope, they can turn to for a good time, they can turn to like kind of shut out the world, to work through their traumas, to learn how to have a healthier relationship. There's so much in there that is appealing to so many people, and I think we're finally starting to see more people finding that for themselves as the stigma does start to go away a bit. I know my husband reads romance. He started so that he could give me better feedback on my own writing, and now reads a ton on his own. We read it together, and honestly, it's made him a better partner. So, like, highly recommend. But I do think it is a genre that is historically for women, but I don't think it's just for women. And I think the world would be better if more people read romance, and I'm not just saying that because I make money off of it.
No, I agree. All right,
Your
any other
husband doesn't just read Reddit.
He does go on Reddit to look for mentions of my books.
Aww.
And then he doesn't tell me if they're mean.
I have a question. If this were to get made into a movie, who would you cast as Allie and Graham? And then if there's any other characters that you've thought about, like who embodies those characters for you?
I don't know. I have never thought about it for this movie. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out the Till There Was You cast.
I was going to say, okay, so then for Till There Was You then.
Oh, for Till There Was You. There's like this, I mean, we can stick with this one. I didn't realize, in the holiday, I feel like when I watch a movie, the characters are as old as they were when I watched it. So I'm like, Jude Law was old in that movie, but he really wasn't. So I don't know, I like to think of like a new person that you've never heard of before who's like up and coming. Like Allie is somebody that, like, I picture Allie as this girl from my sorority who was like 5 feet tall and named Allie and like really silly. Do you know who I'm talking about? little Allie. And so I don't know who I would cast in the movie. For Till There Was You, there's like some guy, Jake Miller, who I found on the internet that I think should be Jake. And he's, I don't know. We'll think about it. We'll pray on it.
Sorry, I'm doing double duty with cake. Any other questions? Up top, maybe? This, actually.
I have a question, but also a comment, which is the most masculine thing I could say, I think, which is just Wrestler's Bagels on Simpson Ferry Road in Mechanicsburg. Highly recommend if you're looking for that like New Jersey taste. I think my question is, are you familiar with that that picture of when you think of an apple? Can you actually picture an apple? Can you rotate it in your mind, or does your brain just say the word apple? Do you know what I'm talking about? How does this factor into your writing life for both of you?
That's so interesting. I feel like I do most of my brainstorming in the car to music, which is like one of the reasons I don't listen to audiobooks, because that is like an audiobook time, and I do my brainstorming during that time, and I will sort of like visualize an uncast actor. But like I'll visualize these people in my brain, and I'll picture the scenes, and then I'll write them down. So I do feel like I'm seeing more the apple. I feel like I when I wrote my first book and they were in an apartment, even though it was not that apartment, even though I know that her apartment in the book was much nicer than the apartment that I lived in when I lived in New York, I kept picturing it as that place. And I was like putting myself in that room and picturing myself in that scene when I was writing it. So I feel like I'm more of an apple. I do think Wrestlers is great. Do you know what I do not think is great is Bagel Boutique. That's a shunda.
I see the apple. I see like, you know how the Apple graphic has like numbers, and like there's like the one really, really fully realized apple, and then it's like one step down. I'm one step down.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing like a hyper realistic apple. I'm seeing like a clip art apple, a really good clip art apple, like when you pay for Canva Pro. And I'm imagining that way. But my husband is Word Apple. So it is really interesting because I'll be like, oh, I love that book. It's so cinematic. He's like, I don't do that. So it is interesting to kind of write from that point of view and then immediately give it to someone who does not picture anything and hope it translates well. But maybe that's the secret, because then it translates to visual people and people who don't have imaginations.
Okay, I think we have a question back here.
Hello. So I have a question. How long did it take you to write the book? And then how long would it be that you would sit at your computer and write, and how much would you write? How many chapters at a time would you get through, or pages, or I'm just curious.
It's like there was I one time read an interview with Emily Henry, and she said every word is like drawing blood from stone, and I was like, God, that's me. Like I don't have a set word count in a day because I don't focus that well. I try to get like 1,000 to 1,500 a day. It doesn't always happen. But it took me probably like 8 months to write the first draft. But I'm writing really slowly, but I don't usually do like heavy revisions. I mean, I don't usually have to rewrite. So it took me like 8 months, and then probably like another 4 or 5 with my editor. With this book, the first book I edited with my agent, and she was like, oh, it just needs like some like light work. And then like 4 months later and 3 rounds later, she's like, all right, you know. So in this one, we didn't do that. It was just my editor. So I had done a little bit of revision as I was writing with critique partners, and I kind of put in their notes. And then I did, I think, only like 2 rounds with my editor. Then there's your main editor does like content edits. And then after that, you do edits with the copy editor and edits with the proofreader, but those are more minor. So I think all in all, like 13 months maybe. But yes, I try to sit there every day. I have a very, very nice office, and I write on my phone at Get Air. But I try to write in the office.
We've got a question up on the mezzanine.
Hi, Alex.
Is the audiobook out yet? Because we want to listen on the way home.
The audiobook is out, and I really like the narrator. I think she sounds, in my mind, like Allie. I think that her British accent sounds Australian, but she's trying, and I really like it. So it is out.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk about trends in publishing for a sec? So, Greek mythology retellings from like a feminist point of view, romanticy's taken off.
Hockey romance.
Hockey romance. There's all these trends, and then all of a sudden, something hits and then like the next season of books is like all riffs off that trend. How do you for both of you, how do you as writers, like, how do you navigate that from a publishing perspective and navigate your relationship with your editor on like, you want to write what you want to write, but also there's a market for certain things and editors want a certain voice or certain plot lines. How do you navigate your own like original creativity with like the demands of the behemoth of publishing?
I'm lucky because the reason I got my deal was because I write stuff that's so bonkers that nobody else is writing it. Now, that's separate from sort of the zeitgeist that just kind of naturally happens in pop culture, where my first book was a road trip romance, and it came out with a whole lot of other road trip romances. And of course, none of us knew that at the time because we wrote them like 2-3 years before. And then, you know, last year I had a book with a ghost, and suddenly there were lots of books with ghosts. And it's not that we were like copying each other so much as just something in the air, like something in the water, was making us think of these kind of similar things at the same time. I have a treasure hunt book coming out in the summer. There's another treasure hunt book coming out a month later from my publisher, so they knew what was happening and didn't tell us. But basically, my goal when I'm coming up with an idea is to go so out there that I'm daring someone to write the same book as me. I'm like, if someone else does write this book, then like I have failed. So I keep working at my premises until it is... My agent likes to say, write something that only you, Sarah, can write. And she doesn't mean like something based on my own experiences or jobs I've had or anything like that. She means something that could only come from my specific brain. And that is always what I'm trying to do. And thankfully, that's something my editor and my team really support. I think that's kind of my niche. That's what they expect of me, and I'm happy to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, I think in traditional publishing, it's hard to chase trends because traditional publishing takes so long for books to come out. So it's much easier for like an indie author who can work faster and print faster to chase the trends. You know, like a lot of the hockey romances, when that was taking off, like if you are able to like publish your own book, you can do it faster. I think about like too, like I think authors who have bigger names. Like I think about like Tessa Bailous. She was like, I'm going to write a hockey book, and everyone's like, I'll pre-order right now. Where do I click? You know, I think they have a different power than if I try to do it. But I think by the time you start trying to chase a trend, the trend is over. But I also have the experience of like the zeitgeist. Like when I said I was going to write Never Planned on You, I was like, that would be so cool because like what romances take place in Baltimore? Like here comes B.K. Borson the same month as me with the Baltimore romance.
My book 4 is Baltimore.
And your book 4, exactly. And like there really weren't that many, and now they're all coming out. I had the same experience with like the Till There Was You. I was like, wow, I bet no one's ever thought about writing a book about a musician and a commoner before. So I don't know. I try not to chase trends. My bigger problem has been that I put a lot of pop culture jokes into my books and then they expire. So like some were like innocuous and some were like less so. Like I put a joke in my very first book that was like, you would be like the next Chrissy Teigen, and then like she had a whole scandal already, and I was like, you would be like a pre-scandal Chrissy Teigen. Like I'm trying to like fix it, and then like I put all these jokes in it about Twitter, and then Twitter was like already X by the time the book came out, and I was like, I'm not doing that again. I'll put something in that's not going to go out of style. And I was like, TikTok. And then like TikTok just banned, and I was like, how is this happening to me again? Like,
That's why I stick with stuff that's from the 70s and 80s because it's already stale.
yeah.
Yes, also that.
Yes, you can't go wrong with the Titanic joke. It's gonna hit every time.
Ooh.
Okay, that's
Sorry.
all we have time for. No, just kidding. Any other questions? One back here.
How many books are you planning to write? And if you're planning, what are you going to name them?
Such a great question. What a cute child. How did you get in here? So I have another book that is coming out sometime next year. I think they're moving it to the spring, summer season, which is fine because I'm not done writing it. And it's called Rewrite the Stars. And so I've sort of like accidentally gotten on this trend where all of my books have Broadway musical titles. We have accidentally. Well, the first time it was sort of an accident. The second time I was like, well, let's keep this going. And then the third time I was like, what? Googling like every Broadway title, like what can we do here? So that one is going to be coming out. That one's a little bit different for me. It's like an older main character. She's divorced, and she has children. And she's sort of trying to move on and find love again after that first one. That one was inspired by something else that I'm sure will do me in the pop culture zeitgeist, because I was like, do you know who needs a good love story? Jennifer Gardner. And we're going to give her one. So I kind of like was inspired by that dynamic. So probably I don't know, hopefully she'll stay clean. But that's the next book I have coming out. And then hopefully as many books as people want to read. I would love to keep going with it. It's really fun. And then we'll see how many books you write.
And when will you be basing one of your books in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania?
I have this idea. I haven't done anything with it yet, but the third book does take place in the Poconos. Like, we're getting closer. I overshot. And I've also like not spent a lot of time in the Poconos. But it's fine.
If there are not any more questions, then we can have cake. So, okay, awesome. Can we have a big round of applause for Sarah and Lindsay?